When you start breaking those small things down, you're able to look at the larger things that are keeping you from acknowledging your whole abundant life. Today we're going to sit with Aparigraha and Brahmacharya. Moderation and non-hoarding. Acknowledgement of abundance. I like the way that Devi puts it. Because non-hoarding gives us a little bit of the ick, right? Because most of us have seen the shows and we can't identify with that, right? Even people who actually experience that dysfunction often don't identify with the fact that they are hoarding, right? They don't recognize the trash heaps that they live in, right? So a part of the recognition of self and the returning of self, the realigning with ourself, is to help recognize what we have already, even if it's very small, and acknowledge that we don't have to have anything. That's number one, because you could be dead. Simple as that. If you have to go that deep, because sometimes it's either that, it's that, our life is that. That much in peril, that's all we have. It's either we're alive or we're dead. So acknowledge that. You could be dead, right? And you don't got nothing to complain about. So how do we get past that, right? How do we move beyond, I'm not dead, I have a place to live? It might not be the best place, but it's my place, even if it's not mine. It's where I have a shelter, because there are people who don't have that, right? It is acknowledging all of the things that you have in your disposal right now, and respecting and honoring those things by keeping them the way that you should keep them, maintaining your body, your abode, all of your jobs, everything. That is what acknowledging your abundance is about. It's not recognizing that scarcity is a lie. Not necessarily a lie. We're running out of shit. Like, it's true. We're in dire straits here in the world, all over the world. Some more than others. But recognize that that is scarcity of our own making. We have not treated the mother the way that we should. If we lived in concert with nature more often, like we did ancestrally, tribally, before industrial revolutions and all of that stuff, if we lived in concert with nature, the state of our environment wouldn't be the way that it is. We wouldn't be running out of clean water and land for people to live on. Here's the thing, we're not even really running out of land for people to live on. People who only need small amounts of land have purchased so much of it. Purchased, right? Scarcity is a lie. It's an illusion. It's a creation of our own making, right? If we acknowledge that, then how do we move around it? How do we deconstruct that idea? Well, we start to deconstruct the hoarding behaviors that we have been instilled with, that are generationally passed down to us, things that are resourcefulness or cultural resourcefulness, our survival skills, are often products of that scarcity of making something out of nothing, trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. Well, once you are making that $1, stop living like you only have 15 cents. You worked hard for that $1. Use it. Because guess what? You can't take it with you. I'm not talking about generational wealth. I'm talking about the idea that that Tupperware that the butter came in, you should keep it forever. I'm just starting that small. Because when you start breaking those small things down, you're able to look at the larger things that are keeping you from acknowledging your whole abundant life. I don't have the biggest house. My relationship is not the best of any of them, but they work for me. And I do what I can to maintain the ones that I have, that I want to keep. That's the thing. Prioritizing the things that really and truly make us wealthy. Because that money is not helping. Because a lot of us are rich and still very, very sad. And live very small lives. Very closed, insular lives. But you got all that money and you still a miserable piece of poop. So, because that's not what the answer was. Monetary gain wasn't the answer. That's not real wealth. It's a appreciation of all of that. Now, that's not me saying that to live like a monk. No. Bask in your glory. Enjoy the spoils, the fruits of your labor. But moderation is key. You're only to take what is required of you. If a storm is not imminent, do you need 6 gallons of milk in your 3-person household? No. Remember during the pandemic where people were buying all the toilet paper? What the fuck? Excuse my language. I'm in a church. But all of those things compounded the panic that was already upon us. We were never going to run out of toilet paper. That was never going to be a thing. We were never going to run out of that. But it's that mob mentality. So let's try to use that mob mentality for the purposes of good. Let's all try to take a moment to acknowledge and appreciate, not just acknowledge, appreciate all that we already have. Acknowledging abundance, Aparigraha. The Sanskrit, I'm working on it. I've been listening to pronunciations. The problem is my American tongue does not very easily make those sounds. I try very hard. I do my best. Anyway, start again. So Nischala Joy Devi describes Book 2, Sutra 39. Acknowledging abundance, Aparigraha, we recognize the blessings in everything and gain insight into the purpose of our worldly existence. The purpose of our worldly existence. If we are not so concerned with the stuff, with the things, then maybe we can get a chance to see it like all it is that we are capable of. Because guess what? The stuff don't matter. Because you could be rich and still very poor. Kendrick Lamar, I think, yes, Rich Spirit, Broke Phone, yeah. Anyway, sorry. Hey, hi, it's me, future me, editing me. I realized when in this process of editing that I forgot to read the sutras for Brahmacharya. So I'm going to use this, me losing my train of thought here, to read those sutras out and post and show you the books. Satchidananda describes Brahmacharya as, by one established in continence, vigor is gained. And in his interpretation, he talks a lot about our fluids and our life force, and how we need to preserve that life force. Nischala Joy Devi describes Brahmacharya as devoted to living a balanced and moderate life. The scope of one's life force becomes boundless. So, both saying the same thing again, but with wildly different interpretations of how we can imprint that moderation in our life. One is very strict and seems very strict in its interpretation of how we should live. The other is just like, do your best to live a balanced life. That's all we got. And that's all I got. All right, continue. Now, Satchidananda says, when non-greed is confirmed, a thorough illumination of how and why one's birth comes. That's a little bit more broad than acknowledging abundance. We recognize the blessings in everything and gain insight into the purpose of our worldly existence. Not the reason why we're born, just like, why we're here. And not necessarily specific for you, because that one's birth comes, the illumination of one's birth comes is very specific to you and what you want. So if somebody who is really struggling with their place in the world, having a full-on existential crisis, reading that is not helpful. It's like, wait a minute. Because I have to unpack all of the abundance, the non-greed. But what if I don't think I'm greedy? I don't see myself as greedy. If I see myself as somebody who shares and does all of those things, it might be hard for you to identify, even that you need to do that. And to recognize that with that comes an understanding of your life's purpose, your goal. Illumination of how and why one's birth comes. It's just a more flighty way of saying what she said. Not more flighty. I don't think that's the word I mean. I'll work on that. I like to say flighty when I describe things that are hard to grasp for people who live on the ground. That's why I sit here. Because I'm talking to people who live on the ground, who live in the muck, who live in this world, who struggle with even recognizing that you're barely surviving. You know what I'm saying? That everything you already have is legitimately enough to move on to the next, right? To move on to the next, to move on to the next. Because none of it is, you get the bigger car, then you're going to have more stuff to put in it. But that's not going to fill you up. It's not about the stuff. It's the point of that whole sutra, is that it's not about the stuff. The stuff is what separates you from who you are. You still need things to survive, food, shelter, all of that. But you can survive on peanut butter and jelly every day. And it could be delicious. Or you can waste your money on Uncrustables. It's simple as that. Moderation and non-hoarding go hand in hand. That's why they're both. That's why they're both in that restructuring of the way we live our lives. So that's my talk I did 15 minutes. Pretty cool. Once again, as you can hear, we're in the echo. There's an echo because I'm all by myself. Nobody's in the stream with me, but that's okay. because I'm moving with abundance. You can get your yoga anywhere. There is no shortage of teachers in the world to share this practice with you. But somebody needs to hear it from me. Just like if you are doing whatever you're doing, you're sharing your light, somebody needs to hear it from you. I don't care where you get your practice from, so long as you practice. Hear it from me, hear it from somebody else. It doesn't matter. Are you getting your yoga from somebody who is reputable? Whose spirit of their teaching aligns with the spirit of the way you move through this world? That's all that matters to me. And we can disagree about it. That's fine. We're allowed to. That's all I got. So let us settle into a seat and start to contemplate our abundance, right? Because if you don't appreciate the things that you have, how and why would you have room for anything else? If you're holding on to trash in your cabinets, your cupboards, you're not going to have room for the new things that are waiting to fill them. Throw those cellophane bags out. You don't need them. We don't have to reuse everything. Some things are trash, should go out of the cycle of your house. One thing I'm going to say about not hoarding, and that is specific to those families who hoard butter tins and cellophane bags, but buy paper plates and throw them away. How much are you wasting there, but trying to save elsewhere? Prioritize. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Just take a look at all the things that you have and where you place your priority on wealth. So let's get into it. Well, that's all I got for now. If you liked it, great. If not, that's cool too. Until next time, be well.